From American actors who became governors, the former later elected president, the latter known for the phrase,
"I'll be back."
to Chima and Chinua, two of Africa's most famous authors who, though not related, by some freaky coincidence, lived in the same house several years apart. And sadly, things did fall apart. Two American T-Ribs and German M. Schumacher Formula One aficionados born on the same day. From America's first black ballerina to Robert Ballard. From Indian author, teacher of yoga, BKS Iyengar, who teaches us and tells us and reminds us that we're not getting any younger, to the drama in Bahama and the rumble in the jungle, a killer and a chiller and the thriller in Manila, to Malala and Lilibeth, the former whose son almost set in the SWAT district from an assassin's bullet, the latter a royal majesty, whose empire the sun, it was said, never set, to the exquisite beauty of our expansive, expanding, and majestic universe. Whatever takes your fancy, there's something for everyone right here, right now. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Sotonye Afiesimama, and this is Today in History for January 23rd. Join me as we journey through history and I share important events as recorded on this day in history. Coming up in today's Today in History, as promised yesterday. Again, you haven't seen my video from yesterday, go check it out. Quite interesting. So, the first American trained woman physician is going to be featured today. Also, the first woman Secretary of State. Also, two Nobel Prize winners from the same tiny island nation. And of course, lots more. Don't go anywhere. So, we're going to begin with this man pictured here. His name is Édouard Manet. Édouard Manet was born on this day in Paris, France. He was a French painter. So, Édouard Manet, this is a self-portrait, so you'll get an idea of his painting style. He was born on this day in 1832. So, Édouard Manet, pictured here in a self-portrait, was born on this day in 1832. So, don't know what you think about his painting. I like his painting, his technique, and the colors, you know, they're not too bright. They're just, what's the right word now? Anyway, it's a nice painting, and his art, his paintings are quite very good. Talented artist, Édouard Manet. So, Édouard Manet pictured here, born on this day in 1832. I don't know what you think of his art. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And yeah, so but go check out his paintings. Go on Google or YouTube or Bing, whatever, do a search, and you find out more about Édouard Manet. But this is a famous French painter, Édouard Manet, who was born on this day in 1832. Next, as promised at the outset, her name is Elizabeth Blackwell. So this is the first woman-trained American physician. She was born in England, but received her MD degree, so medical doctor degree from Geneva Medical College in New York, becoming the first American trained woman physician. So her name was Elizabeth Blackwell, who on this day in 1849 received an MD degree from Geneva Medical College in New York, becoming the first American trained woman physician. 1891, another doctor, this time male and this time African American, Dr. Daniel Hale Williams. This was the day in 1891 that he founded Provident Hospital in Chicago, Illinois. He also founds Provident Hospital School of Nursing because Emma Reynolds had been denied admission by each of Chicago's nursing schools on the grounds that she was black. How sad. How sad, but it led to something positive. At least he founds Provident Hospital School of Nursing, because he wanted her to be trained as a nurse. He didn't see why she should be excluded from being trained as a nurse just because of the color of her skin. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. When you think about it today in the 21st century, you just think how ridiculous it is, or it was, that human beings could stoop so low and think so low. You're thinking everyone or most people think in a certain way, and those who decide to think differently are a lot of the time they're ostracized by society because they dare think differently. But that's human beings for you, I guess. Most of us tend to be mentally lazy and we just follow the crowd. Whatever the crowd does, we follow. Until someone dares to think and do different, most people just carry on with life, carry on with the status quo. An example comes to mind, Roger Bannister. If you haven't heard of him, go Google him up, search on the internet. Now this guy broke the 4-minute mile. It's never happened before, and as soon as he broke the 4-minute mile, I hear that high school students were routinely breaking the 4-minute mile. So there was this lid on the belief of most people at the time that it was not possible to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. But Roger Bannister did it in less than 4 minutes, and soon after, hundreds and hundreds of people broke the 4-minute mile, I think within 2 or 3 years. So what kept them from doing that all this while? What kept them? Their mind, their mental state. It can't be done, so we'll just chill, Anyway, that's food for thought, guys. That's food for thought. So whatever is keeping you down mentally, suppressing you mentally, psychologically, whatever, or in any other way, just think about it. Think about the story of Roger Bannister. Think about the story of other people who decided to change or challenge the status quo so that we as a human race could forge ahead. Right, so next, Subhas Chandra Bose, who is pictured here, was an Indian nationalist whose defiant patriotism made him a hero in India. He was born on this day in 1897. His attempts during World War II to rid India of British rule with the help of Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan left a troubled legacy. Understandably so, but this guy was trying his best to get rid of the British from his country. He didn't feel it was fair that a foreign power had usurped power in his country, telling them what to do, obviously for the wealth of India. It's happened in other countries as well around the world in the British Empire. But I guess it's still happening today. It's still happening today where might is right. The bigger countries, the wealthier countries tend to go into a country not so wealthy and not so powerful and dominate them, plunder their resources and leave, when they're done and dusted, they leave the country. And the people very poor as well. So, but it's not a one-sided story. A lot of governments in some of these countries, a lot of the leaders are corrupt as well. So the colonizers have left now. The country is now in your hands, and you are not running the country any better than the colonizers were. You know, it's sad. In most cases, it's that's the case. The truth has got to be told. So we need to step up, especially in Africa, where some of our leaders are very corrupt, they're selfish, they just think about themselves or people from their tribes, you know, and don't give a damn about anyone else. It's pathetic. So we also need to take responsibility for our own communities and societies and countries as well, you know, if we want to move forward. And no one has our best interests at heart more than ourselves, you know. So if we think that someone from outside would come and save us from ourselves, then that's just not going to happen. Okay, rant over. Let's move on to the next historical event on this day. I did mention that there were two guys who received the Nobel Prize, and they were from a tiny island. Yeah, so this is the first guy pictured here. His name was Sir William Arthur Lewis. Born on this day in 1915, he was a St. Lucian economist and the James Madison Professor of Political Economy at Princeton University. Lewis was known for his contributions in the field of economic development. He was born in St. Lucia. So, Nobel Prize winner Sir Arthur Lewis, William Arthur Lewis, born on this day on the 23rd of January 1915. Also, another Nobel Prize winner, St. Lucian as well, pictured right here. His name is Derek Walcott, born exactly 15 years later, 1930 of course, was an author born in Castries, St. Lucia. So he also won the Nobel Prize for literature, born in 1930, also from St. Lucia. So St. Lucia has two Nobel Prize winners. I'm not sure there's any other island as tiny as St. Lucia in the world have two Nobel Prize winners. If you do know any country, any such country, let me know in the comment section below. I don't think there is. So for the size of a country, it's a massive feat. There are countries with hundreds of millions of people who don't have one Nobel Prize winner. So St. Lucians must be very, very intelligent people. 1939, on this day, this is what happened. This guy, American disability rights activist, Ed Roberts, who was considered the founder of the independent living and disability rights movement, was born in San Mateo, California. Full name, Edward Vern Roberts, was the first student who relied on a wheelchair to attend the University of California in Berkeley. So again, 1939, this guy, Ed Roberts, was born. He was a disability rights activist, first student who relied on a wheelchair to attend the University of California in Berkeley. 7 years later, in 1946, Susan L. Taylor, pictured here, author, editor, writer, journalist, was born in New York to a father from the Caribbean island of St. Kitts. Now, a bit more about this beautiful lady. She is the editor-in-chief of the enormously popular magazine Essence. She has also written books, including In the Spirit, a collection of essays reprinted from her Essence collection of the same name. Taylor is known as a source of inspiration and encouragement for African American women, understandably so. So Susan Taylor, 75 years old today, author, editor, writer, journalist, editor-in-chief of the enormously popular magazine Essence. On this day, the year was 1972. Shelly Chisholm He was the first African American presidential nominee from one of the two major parties. So that happened on this day in 1972. She was the first African American presidential nominee. She was nominated on this day in 1972. First one from one of the two major parties. So there have been African Americans who've been elected, but the parties have been a lot smaller than they were not one of the two major political parties in the United States. So Democrats, Republicans. Okay. So this is Shelly Chisholm. She had long been known for breaking barriers. 4 years before, she'd become the first Black U.S. Congresswoman in history as a representative of her New York district. When she launched her primary campaign in 1972, so January of 1972, she became the first Black person to seek the presidential nomination from one of the two major parties. The first woman was Margaret Chase Smith, who sought the Republican nomination in 1964. Her slogan was "Unbought and Unbossed." So I'm going to show you that slogan now. Scroll down a bit so you can see that on this poster. So, both Chisholm 1972, Unbought and Unbossed. So this is Shelly Chisholm. Bring us together, us for US. Brilliant play on words. Shelly Chisholm, first African American presidential nominee from one of the two major parties. That happened on this day, again in 1972, when she was nominated. Okay, let's move on now to the year 1976, 4 years later. On this day, Paul Robeson, American bass, baritone, concert artist, and stage and film actor who became famous both for his cultural accomplishments and for his political activism, died sadly. Educated at Rutgers College and Columbia University, he was also a star athlete in his youth. So this is Paul Leroy Robeson, American bass, baritone, concert artist, stage and film actor, and athlete. Died sadly on this day in 1976. Exactly a year later, in 1977, the TV miniseries Roots, an adaptation of Alex Haley's best-selling novel, made its debut. It became one of the most popular shows in the history of American television and galvanized attention on African American issues and history. So this, as you can see from this picture, is a cast reunion of Roots, featured on the ABC several years ago. So 1977 again, the TV miniseries Roots made its debut. 1986, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland inducted its first class, which included Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, and Elvis Presley. So pictured here are, of course, Fats Domino and Elvis Presley. Chuck Berry pictured here. So these are the three people who were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The year was 1986. 11 years later, yes, I mentioned this lady at the outset. Her name, of course, is Madeleine Albright. Madeleine Albright was sworn in as U.S. Secretary of State on this day in 1997. She had earlier served as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. She assumed office under President Bill Clinton, the office of Secretary of State, becoming the first woman to hold that cabinet post. So this is Madeleine Albright, who was sworn in on this day as the first female Secretary of State. The year was 1997. 2009, last but not least, history, of course, was made on this day in a very big way. This was the day in 2009 that Democratic Senator Barack Obama secured enough votes to become the first black man in US history to become the presidential nominee of a major American political party. After a prolonged and often bitter competition with fellow forerunner Hillary Clinton. I'll end this segment with a quote from Barack Obama. He says, "Tonight, we mark the end of one historic journey with the beginning of another, a journey that will bring a new and better day to America." On that note, folks, we have nearly come to the end of today's Today in History. Before that, coming up in tomorrow's Today in History, gold nuggets. And this is not the metaphorical one. Our princely show, fresh in the day, the clue is in the phrase, and this country's most famous prime minister. Join me tomorrow for Today in History, when all is revealed. Thanks for dropping by, guys. Thanks for your support. If you do like this video, give me a thumbs up. Share as well, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Thank you so much. Take care, stay safe. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.